How is everybody? Good. I am so honored to be here for Lili Taylor's very first book. I have a feeling, yes, thank you. Yes, we can clap for a first book. And I have a feeling it's not the last, so congratulations on getting in on the ground floor of a stellar literary career. I feel very lucky to be here. I've known Lili for about 20 years. We spent a lot of hours together on various Brooklyn playground benches when our children were little. And I always was in awe of her. She was so graceful and kind and generous and had this sort of eerie, sort of supernatural calm, which was found in none of the playgrounds outside of Lili Taylor. So when she asked me to do this, I was just thrilled. So I feel like this book is all of that calm, like bottled up in a way that I always wanted it to be. I thought if I could just like distill her essence into some kind of something I could drug people with, like maybe sneak into their food, I would like that. And I think this is the next best thing. So I would encourage you to get it for everybody you know, as it is the perfect gift, and it will feel good to get your holiday shopping done in May. Okay, so before we start talking, and we'll talk for about a half an hour, and then we will turn it over for questions, which we would enjoy. I would like to make her read something. Would you please read the beginning of the book, just to sort of set up how you became a birder in the first place?
We all know what a bird is. They live in our yards, in our cities, on our seas. They exist on every single continent. They are the subject of children's books and books for grown-ups. They are depicted in visual art, in television documentaries, in movies. They have been around for more than 145 million years. One of the earliest cave paintings was of a bird. We use them as symbols and metaphors. We even eat them. But most people don't really know birds, or rather, they aren't aware of them. I used to be one of those people. I knew birds existed. I thought about them, maybe even more than the average person, but I didn't know them. There's a term in the birding world for the bird who brings one into the world of birding. That term is spark bird, and I don't have one. I wish I did. I get asked the question all the time, and it's one of those answers that could be perfect for an interview, clean, concise, and easy. But my memory dims when I try to recall which bird first opened my heart and mind to all birds. Class Aves, phylum Chordata, belonging to the kingdom Animalia, categorized under Reptilia, but because their blood is warm, they are not reptiles. Birds are technically flying dinosaurs, and I love them. I started to sense birds in a deeper way about 15 years ago when I took an emotional sabbatical from my work as an actor. I'd been going from project to project without a break, and I felt depleted. So I retreated to my house in upstate New York, about 2 hours from New York City. The house sits on 100 acres of working farmland. When I bought the property, I signed an agricultural conservation easement with Scenic Hudson, the environmental organization dedicated to safeguarding the Hudson Valley's landscapes, including the region's farmland. It's a way of ensuring the farmland will be kept open and available for agricultural use. There are several agricultural easements in the surrounding area with a local farmer, Kenny Migliorelli, farming on most of them. I've become friends with Kenny and learned how stressful it is to be a farmer. There's so little in his control, and it changes day to day. Small farmers are probably closer than most people to the very essence of life. During the time of my sabbatical, Kenny was letting the fields go fallow, meaning he wasn't cultivating a crop, but instead putting in plants that would restore the soil. For the first time since I'd bought the home, there were no big crop tending or harvesting machines or trucks coming through the property. And there, in the stillness, I started to hear birds. It was as if I'd switched my audio input from one dimension to Dolby Stereo. Bird sounds began to differentiate themselves from one another. They were no longer generic tweets or chirps, but specific sounds with meaning. There were things going on out in the yard, stories, drama, mating, fighting, death. During that time of personal quiet, I entered a world of sound outside myself, and I've never left. Now, it's not that my hearing is better than it was. It's that my perception of the world is wider and deeper. This new awareness of the sounds of birds drew me into a parallel universe, one of constant change and movement, full of life and the will to survive. Wherever I am, wherever I listen, I can tap into that profound energy of survival and draw power from it.
So there we have you becoming a birder. And what I'd like to hear about now is you becoming a writer. How did you come to write this book specifically? I feel like you've probably been asked to write about acting, about all the movies you've been in, and all that kind of thing. How did you wind up doing this book specifically, and what was it like to do it?
Well, I'd been working on a one-woman show that had birding and acting in it, and I showed it to my manager, and my manager said, I'm not sure what to do with this, but I have an agent you should meet, David Kuhn. And so I met with David, and David said, well, why don't you write me an email about a bird you've observed? And that's how it began. And it was such a brilliant way to help a beginning writer, maybe even any writer, because it didn't feel like I was writing anything. It felt like I was writing an email. And so there was no pressure. And that's how it began.
I love that it was literally the bird by bird advice that the famous Anne Lamott book about how to become a writer is exactly what you did. Was you did a bird for every chapter. And what about the creative process was interesting for you compared to acting? I think you did you go to a writer's space? Did you write every day? What was it like?
I have a space at the Center for Fiction. You can get a membership there where you can just go and read, but there's also like a writing space. So I have there. I go there, and I love that. And I usually would go when Maeve would go to school, and then I would take off and go. I was trying to take advantage of when I wasn't working, and get as much done as I could. And it's obviously very different. There was a couple of things I really liked about it. I liked how concrete it was in a way, whereas acting is like so amorphous. And sometimes it's hard to tell like what you've done or what you're doing, and all these other people are involved, and directors and writers, but with writing it's like it's me and the words and my editor. And there's something really nice and, an author. I'm authoring as opposed to saying someone else's words, right? So I really enjoyed the process. And then the George Saunders book helped me a lot. Just again, keep it manageable. Just read what I wrote the day before. Just if it's like, go back, keep working till it's not,
That's excellent advice for any profession. So another thing I love about this book is that it's like a climate book that is fun. I feel like so much of climate science and so much of the writing out there about what's happening to the planet is kind of hard to look at because it's so bleak. And I feel like you found a way to talk about that and to talk about this very specific corner of the world in this way that's just so beautiful and evocative and makes you feel like you want to protect it, like that. It not only do you want to, but it's like fun to do it. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your work to help birds. I mean, you did it in so many different ways that you illustrate in this book. The September 11th lights, for example. I thought that was such a beautiful moment. Maybe you can talk about that or the other work you've done with Audubon.
Sure. I think all of us can get overwhelmed with climate stuff, and I know for me is just like how to make things manageable. And I feel like birds or trees or butterflies or flowers or clouds, whatever you want to kind of gravitate towards, there's something specific there and that you can do, to sort of focus on it and help. And so birds are a great way in, because birds are sort of a canary in a coal mine, to use that metaphor. And they, Audubon has this saying, birds tell us. And they do, and in many, many ways. And they also tell us what they need. They tell us what they don't need, and then you can act accordingly, get good data and do stuff. So anyways, one of the things is, for instance, on 9/11, when those beautiful lights go up to celebrate the tribute to life, tribute in light, excuse me, birds are drawn to the city lights. They're not sure why, but they're drawn into them. And that what happens is that they get trapped in those lights. And so when you look up there on 9/11, it looks like there's dust particles up there, but those are birds. And when we go New York City Bird Alliance in Cornell, we lie it down on the ground, on a roof, and we have binoculars and we count on the half hour. And when it gets to 1,000 birds, we ask them to shut the lights out for 20 minutes so the birds can disperse. And it's great because it's like it actually is literally shining a light on a problem that's happening all over the city. So there are these great lights out programs in about 45 cities where buildings turn out the lights, and there's a concerted effort to help the birds out so they can get to where they're going. But so that's one of the things that, I do.
And so another thing I love about this is that it's not sappy. Like, you're doing all these good things, and there are many other examples in the book. But you also, there are birds you don't like or enjoy particularly, and you maybe intervene in some wars and take a side between various birds. Can you talk about that experience of the blue jays and the sparrows, and how you were not Switzerland in this case?
Yeah, right, exactly. It's an eastern bluebird. Not a blue jay.
Oh, blue jay. Oh, right.
That's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
I will read the book again.
Yeah, bird nerd problem. So the eastern bluebird is it looks like a Disney bird. It's so beautiful, and they were like going close to extinct in the 20s due to habitat loss and so on. And this guy started building these bluebird houses for them that were specific to them, and sparrows couldn't really use them, and starlings and so on, because other birds were taking bluebird nests. Bluebirds have to have, their secondary nesting, they have to make use of a nest that's already existing. Whereas a sparrow can make a nest out of anything. But bluebirds can't. They have to use an existing hole. So anyway, this guy built this trail called the Bluebird Trail. And he made it from all over the United States. And the bluebirds started to come back. And there's a thing called being a bluebird monitor. So you can monitor and keep out things that are trying to eat the bluebirds and stuff like that. And so bluebirds are doing really well now. And so I put up bluebird boxes, and I became a bluebird monitor on my property. And a sparrow came into town, and I hadn't had any sparrows prior. And they are the #1 killer of bluebirds. And it was hell. And it was the sparrow massacred the 4 young chicks and killed the female, was taking all the boxes, almost like a mean realtor who was like, I'm going to have all these buildings, even though I'm not going to rent any of them. And so there's ways to deal with that. And I tried trapping it. I boiled the eggs. You boil the eggs, put them back. They keep laying on them, but then they think, okay, there's something wrong, and then they leave. But then one of those eggs hatched. And so then I had a really crazy young sparrow. And then, I'm sorry if there's any people, I had my neighbor come and shoot the sparrow. So that's what we had to do. It's life. And so it's life.
Yes, there's life and death. There's everything. In this book. Can I get you to read another little bit? I want another little taste about the chimney swifts, which I think also was in Nick Flynn's "Ticking is the Bomb." Did you talk about that in that book? Yes. So you showed him this, and now you're showing everybody.
At 7:30 p.m., the sun dropped below the horizon, signifying the start of civil twilight. I didn't know at the time that there was such a thing as civil twilight, but now I do, thanks to swifts, bats, owls, and nocturnal migration. Twilight is the time between night and day, when there is still light out, but the sun is below the horizon. Morning twilight is dawn, and evening is dusk. Astronomers define the 3 stages of twilight based on how far the sun is below the horizon: civil, nautical, and astronomical twilight. When I saw the first swifts gather, the sun had just set, entering civil twilight, which lasts about 25 minutes, the approximate time it takes for the sun to move 6 degrees below the horizon. The gentle rays of refracted light illuminated the swifts' circular congregation. New swifts continued to fly in from all directions, some alone, some in small groups, and entered the circle without missing a wing beat. The energy of the ring changed with the setting sun. With each degree the sun dropped, the ring of swifts gathered momentum, spinning faster but never frenzied, with the school chimney at its center. I had no idea how many swifts ultimately were in the ring. The swift counter said it was well into the hundreds. They spun round and round, and then suddenly one swift dropped into the chimney. Who was that swift, the first one in? What was it like dropping into a dark void? How did they grab onto the wall? If they dropped in so fast, how would they not drop all the way down to the bottom? I'd be scared if I had to do that. Another swift dropped down, like an ember in reverse. Another and another slipped away. Then all at once, the swifts funneled into the chimney in one great inky swirl. The world had gone silent, no fighting or squabbling. 2 or 3 swifts remained flying in the now bare circle. They were the rear guard, a beacon for lost swifts. What swift was out there who didn't know where the chimney was? That would be nerve-wracking to have to get here by dark. Where would it sleep if it didn't make it?
So you talk about actors as psychological detectives and compare birding to acting in that they both require this very focused attention and that's rewarded. So I feel like you could start an acting school where you just send all the young actors out and make them into birders. And it translates so beautifully the way you talk about it. So maybe can you expand on that a little bit, on the ways in which acting and birding have this sort of shared DNA?
Yeah, well, the main thing is listening, and it was so great to learn that listening is a skill, and so it can be practiced. And a skill, like, I don't try to get perfect at it, because I can't, but so I can just keep practicing. And I mean, what I've really learned is how much I don't listen. When I'm acting, of course, I've got me and the character and lots of other things, and I'm going to think about other things. It's unrealistic for me to think I'm going to be in the moment for the whole thing. But birding has helped me kind of maybe be gentler with myself, to just kind of keep getting back up on the horse when I realize I'm not listening, just get back up and just keep practicing and practicing. Listening in a deeper way of like not imposing something onto the character, not imposing something onto the bird, sort of listening, seeing, being open to what that character is, being open to the bird instead of like trying to name it first, or, there's all sorts of things that are happening out of fear, I guess, instead of just being kind of quiet, just letting the bird, reveal itself to me. So those are a couple ways. And I feel like being in the moment as an actor is sort of, to me, always felt like I didn't have any way to gauge it. Like, am I in the moment? What is being in the moment? Like, being, what's being? It's very, but like listening, it's like, yeah, I know when I'm listening and I know when I'm not. So it's a nice kind of barometer.
There's so much philosophy in this book that feels completely earned. You talk about how surrender never comes out of peace. There's the Nietzsche quote, "Sorrow is deep, but joy is deeper." And you say ecstasy is exhausting at one point. It's so profound. And I wonder if you could talk a little about what birding has given you in terms of philosophy. You talked about the listening piece of it, which is so profound. And maybe what other ways has it connected you more to the world around you, to other people, to your work?
Well, it's a way to connect to something that's not me, that's outside of myself, that can feel bigger. It's a way I feel a part of when I kind of observe a bird and it moving in its world, because a bird's world is quite it's involved. There's a lot going on in a bird's world, and so I can feel a part of, and it's just a way like to calm things down there. I tend to say no a lot, and it's a way for me to say yes, and to get outside. There's a phrase I use: no contempt prior to investigation. Not mine, but I use that daily, and birds are a great way for me to just keep open.
What I love about that phrase is that you can have contempt after investigation. It's very well educated. Contempt. So I'm just going to ask one more question. Then I'm going to have you read a little more, and then I'd like people to ask questions at will. So when it comes to the rest of us and developing attention and learning how to do it, I think one thing that's so wonderful about this is it's so accessible, because you do talk about getting frustrated and bored and confused and learning. And I think all the questions you were asking about the swifts are so relatable. Like, oh, that seems scary. Like, what's going to happen now? And it's almost like an adventure story. So what about those of us who don't have the training of acting, who don't, who are even worse listeners than you describe yourself, early in the process? How can we start?
Well, this neuroscientist had said, hearing is a sense, listening is a skill, and the difference between the two is paying attention. And attention, the root of it is tandra, which is tense. it's tension. So it's not comfortable, and it shouldn't be. So when I'm trying to expect myself to feel comfortable when I'm paying attention, is not really that fair to myself. It's like it's hard, and I shouldn't have to be paying attention for long, because I'm stretching. I'm stretching when I'm paying attention, and in fact, it says in the dictionary to stretch, especially with the mind. And so it's like I'm going to go back to my regular state, because I can't stretch forever. It wouldn't be a stretch. So the point, what am I saying? That start listening, to just know that it's a skill, which already is like gives you some agency, because it's like, oh, like there's things I can do there. And it's like, in just getting some awareness, like when someone's talking and it's like, why am I talking in here so much? Have I listened to anything they just said? Or like realizing like I hadn't been even aware of the birds around. Or I was on set the other day and I walked into the room and I thought I knew the room well. I thought I was paying attention. And then we left and they did lights and stuff. And then like I came back in and somehow the room had gotten turned around. And I thought I knew that room. And I came back in and I was on the wrong mark. And Vince was like, what are you doing over there? I'm like, no, I was over here. That's where, and he's like, no, the mark is here. And I was like, wouldn't you know it? I thought I knew this room. I thought I'd taken in that painting. I thought I'd taken in that painting. No, I hadn't taken. So it's just like levels of just realizing, wow, there's a lot of layers here, and just to be gentle.
Wonderful. Would you read about one more bird, please? Could you read about the catbird? And then I'd like everybody, please, think of your questions now, and then we can barrage her.
Okay. Now, I've seen a catbird before many times. I know a catbird. It's a common bird, a little smaller than a robin, slate gray with a clean black cap, a splotch of rufous under the tail. It's in the mimid family, along with the mockingbird and brown thrasher. The catbird makes a variety of musical and harsh sounds, as well as a cat-like mewing. It's not a rarity in the city, and some birders might say, "You're looking for a catbird? Why?" Any bird that isn't a pigeon or a house sparrow living in the heart of a metropolis is worth visiting. Some pigeon lovers say pigeons are too. I'm working on that. As I scanned the park, I was confident and convinced I was going to see the catbird. So much so, I was strutting around like John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. I was looking here, looking there, strutting on. But my strut lost its confidence the longer I looked. It started to dawn on me that I don't know the catbird at all. I knew it made the mewing sound. I knew it was gray and had a black hat, but I didn't know how it behaved, what it ate, if it liked the ground or the high trees. I felt overwhelmed. The park suddenly felt loud. The volume knob turned up high. There was a lot going on. I didn't know where to start. The place felt enormous and general. I wanted to leave. This wasn't relaxing. It didn't feel good. But I kept walking. I told myself to just walk slowly. Follow your feet. Don't think. I found myself stopped in front of a leaf at eye level. I didn't have any idea what it was. I'd been classifying leaves just as green things. But what was it? What's its purpose? Is it from here? Is it a food source? I had just discovered the app, iNaturalist. You take a photo of any plant, animal, insect, any living thing, you upload it to a community of almost 1 million expert and novice naturalists, and they help you name it. They say this leaf in front of me is named viburnum. It's native, meaning that it belongs here. I feel better knowing something. There is one less stranger in the world. I stay with my new friend viburnum and scan the ground it's rooted in. I walk alongside the row of plantings like a detective, looking carefully, pausing, continuing. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy sitting on a bench, looking at me with his head slight cocked, eyes squinting. I employ my acting skills and pretend I lost something. I touch my ear, feeling for the ghost earring, hoping he picks up on that. I wish I wasn't so self-conscious. I resume honest looking when I'm out of his view. But my energy is dipping. I'm not making any progress at all. But then I ask, is it really about finding this one thing? Isn't it also about being in the moment and not worrying about the goal? Yeah, but I also want to find the goddamn catbird.
Hi, Lily. I'm curious about the tools of birding. Like, painters have paintbrushes and they become very attached to them. So I was wondering what your tools were and if you develop a kind of affection or a nerd core around the tools.
Well, one thing I would say is, like, if you don't know birds that well and might want to be kind of interested in them, to just don't worry about doing much at the beginning and just sort of start looking out your window, set up a feeder, get to know the birds in your neighborhood, along the street, stop. When you see a bird, take a few minutes. Start simple. You can get if you have $500, you can get a decent pair of binoculars. If you don't have that money, they're not that great below that price point. And one way to practice binoculars is you just kind of work on a man-made sign and pretend that the bird is up at the top of the sign. And if I was gonna do that, I would be the bird is that speaker. I would start at the bottom of the speaker, follow up, and it's really hard. All of a sudden you're lost, you don't know where you are when you're using the binoculars. So start slow. Sibley, David Sibley is a wonderful bird. He's an ornithologist and he draws them. He helps explain behavior. It's a nice guide, it's simple. Start really simple, Merlin ID app. is fantastic. It's the Shazam for birds. And it just like, it lets you know what's happening out there. And it's like, I always underestimate what's happening. And then I put the Merlin on, I'm like, no. Oh, you're kidding. It's like there's 15 species. I mean, that means that there's 15 species, meaning there's many, those are just kinds of birds. But then the amount, anyway. So those are a couple ways, but just to keep it simple and just don't worry about being like, that's a robin or that's a, you know.
There's also a lot of travel opportunities, it seems like. So you talked about going to the Great Gathering. Can you maybe mention that there are always opportunities to hang out with other people who love what you love?
Yeah, like I didn't know that there was a thing called a birding festival. And there is. And my first one was in Ohio. It was close to home, biggest week in American birding. And wow, I found my tribe. And it was lovely. And there's a lot of birding festivals. So anyway, yeah, there's things to do, but you can also just go on your corner or your backyard.
When did you feel like you really became to have a grasp of knowledge with it? Mm-hmm. Because it just seems like it's always more and more. I go to birding, I go to Coral Schultz, I do different things, but I'm always just like, wow, I'm overwhelmed with it all. You know, New York has so many species. We're so lucky here. So
it can get very overwhelming, and overwhelming isn't good for humans. We don't do well with it. And I've been very overwhelmed. Like shorebirds can be really overwhelming. And when I reach that point, I just try to take a breath and just not worry about trying to get it all down in a day and just know, you know, the long game. And just, you know, whenever like like if I see someone who knows what they're doing with birding, I just like get next to them and I just listen and I ask questions. But just hang in there and you'll have it where it just starts to feel like you've got the experience, you've got the know-how. Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering what you thought of the story of Flacco, which I found I think so many New Yorkers found that so moving and full of symbolism and unfortunately a tragic end, but I just was wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, Flacco, I mean, I think any kind of story for birds is a good story to get the word out. Flacco was great, you know.
Should we recap the story?
Sure. Would you like to recap?
No, I want you to do it.
Oh, I'm not as good at recapping.
You can tell us what.
Flacco was released from, I believe it was a Central Park Zoo, by I don't think they ever found the vandals that did it. And they tried to capture him, they couldn't get him, it was an owl. And, you know, he just survived. They didn't think he would survive, and he survived on his own very well. And then, unfortunately, I believe at the end, he was eating rodents to survive and flew into a window. And I think it had to do with the way they covered the window, and it was part of a larger lesson of how can we keep this happening to birds in the future.
Yeah, and so that's I think the part of the story where, you know, we can really learn stuff where, you know, rats are a real problem, the rodenticide. Now, rats are a problem for humans, and they're also a problem for hawks and owls and urban creatures. So what can we do? Are there ways to work with, like, for instance, we've talked to some of the parks and asked them to maybe not put out rodenticide when the hawks are breeding, for instance. So there's ways to work with, you know, there's ways to work and together. And so Flacco brought great attention to rodenticide and to also collisions with windows and lights. So it was a great story. But you know, he wasn't from here, and he was captive, and so there were some other things that were maybe a little more problematic. But friggin', he had a spirit, boy. Yeah.
Yeah, he became kind of like a folk hero, right? I mean, I feel like there were just sightings, and there's a giant mural to Flacco on the Bowery, right? And it's like him and the Ramones, right? It's just
Do you try to describe to yourself bird songs so that you remember them? And do you feel like you're limited in vocabulary for describing sounds? Or how do you remember?
That's great. I would say I'm not doing great in that area. Sound is really hard to describe, but I'm friends with a guy who is one of the best birders by ear. And he's written books about it, and he's developed a system on how to organize bird sound. And he believes it's all organized wrong. Like it's a lot of it's like, for instance, the Towie, drink your tea, or the barred owl, who cooks for you all. Like we put these little things, and that's not a very helpful because it doesn't always sound like that. And but he has a system on how to break down the song. But I got a little overwhelmed, and so I thought, okay, I'll just take a breather and just. But I just, whenever I feel like I get overwhelmed, I just try to just take a breath and think, well, maybe that's not going to be my skill set, you know. So I don't have a way in there.
You talked about how you were listening to the birds, and it made me think, and listening in general, it made me think of that great acronym, WAIT, Why Am I Talking? Oh. And I wondered in your listening if you ever felt like the birds were actually speaking directly to you. I think of Virginia Woolf hearing the birds speak in Greek. Did you ever feel that that it was personal somehow, that you were hearing something specific?
No.
Okay.
I wish I did. I wish. No.
But it changed your listening, it sounds like.
It sure did. It sure did. And there's some people that do get that out of birds, you know. But yeah,
no ancient Greek. Okay.
Yeah, no. I know it's a lose for me. I lose.